UNSW's plans after Opal. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Heiser Says. I'd like to read this article from UNSW about a research project learning from Opal. So the City Futures Research Centre's new ARC Linkage project will put the multi-unit housing sector under the microscope and propose specific changes to protect people buying units. Now, this is a big issue. If you haven't been following the news, we've got issues with Opal, Lacrosse, the Shergold-Weir report. Yeah, it's big news. UNSW Sydney's Futures Research Centre will address the severe and growing concern about building quality issues in the multi-unit housing sector. The centre has been awarded a $273,000 ARC Linkage Grant for a 2-year project to tackle major defects in strata housing in New South Wales. The project, led by UNSW City Futures Director Professor Bill Randolph, will build on previous research to accurately identify the scale of major defects threatening to undermine the multi-unit housing sector. Well, if I can add my humble opinion, you should look at the procurement methodology and the differences between the different outcomes. Because frankly, the way the building is procured, I bet you will have a significant impact on the actual outcome. And by procurement, I mean how the builder, architect, project manager, and building certifier, the whole relationship dynamic there. The project team also includes UNSW Build Environment Professor Martin Loosman, UNSW Scienta Fellow Dr. Hazel Eathorpe, and UNSW City Futures Research Fellow Dr. Lara Croman. As well as identifying the prevalence of significant building defects, the project will seek to understand the causes and provide innovative solutions to improve housing quality, which could bring about sweeping changes to the sector. Now, I hope, well, haven't we already done this? Don't we already have the Shergold-Weir report? What about that? But, it's $250,000, why not? The multi-unit housing sector in Australia is estimated to be worth more than $1 trillion for now, and provides almost half of new housing in Australia. Sydney is at the forefront of the construction revolution, now building more units than standard houses. The Australian dream has changed. A previous study conducted by the City Futures Research Centre, one of the only quantitative assessments of multi-unit housing defects in Australia to date, found that 75 to 85% of owners' corporations had identified at least one significant defect in their building. Yeah, well, you've got to remember, buildings are one-off, unique works, and they're complicated things. I'd like to know what they consider a significant defect is. What are they defining as significant? It is generally recognized that developments in residential buildings have a high proportion of defects when they're built, says Professor Randolph. I'd also like to see the correlation between this and the procurement method. Why aren't they ever talking about this? Design and construct, does it lead to more defects or does it lead to less defects? There you go. There's a question. Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you think? Do you think procurement is making a difference? It is generally, I already read that. Despite these problems, there's no comprehensive data available on defective apartment buildings, what kinds of defects exist, or why they've occurred. Oh, well, that's concerning. I would argue, well, I would hope that professional bodies would be collecting this data. But then again, would the builders do it? No, their bodies probably wouldn't collect it. They wouldn't want to know about it. The individual building practices would do it and manage it in their QA systems. They wouldn't release that. The Institute of Architects doesn't really do anything research-wise except feminist rubbish. And I'm not familiar with any of the others. So we have now put together a team of industry partners to support a new research project to address this knowledge gap. The research will focus on 3 areas of Sydney's biggest high-density housing markets: City of Sydney, Parramatta, and Canterbury Bankstown. Professor Randolph says the project methodology is one of the most ambitious undertaken by the Research Centre and will engage stakeholders across industries, including Strata, insurance, and law. Well, that's fantastic. That is really good to see that they're bringing all these people together. That's great. That's encouraging. That is encouraging to read. We're already going to do an in-depth data gathering exercise on about 600 of these blocks in these 3 areas. with a view to try to work out what's going on. Which ones have defects? What are the defects? If they have them, and importantly, how much of it is it going to cost to fix, and by whom? Well, by whom? Probably the body corporates, really. Remember, there's 1,400 apartments, or buildings, sorry, more than 1,400 buildings identified in Victoria alone that have fire cladding, flammable cladding on it. Would they be considered defects? It hasn't been done before. Nobody's ever done it before because it's a tough job. Professor Randolph anticipates the project will also have international implications in markets such as the US and the UK. It's certainly of comparable scale internationally. There are lots of high-density towers going up in cities like London and Toronto, let alone Singapore and Hong Kong, and with very similar processes and conditions in the investor market, which is driving the development. It's happening everywhere, and it's a generic issue worldwide. He believes the project will further uncover fundamental issues in the housing sector, being undermined by cascading risks, blame shifting, and lack of oversight. There's a whole series of places where things can go wrong. There's a whole chain of risk which is pushed further and further down the chain from the developers, right down to the subcontractors, yes, where people can cut corners as they did in the Opal Tower, and nobody really checks up on them because there's no proper oversight. Well, yeah, there needs to be a look into also the project management profession. They really haven't. Opal, they've kind of got away with a lot of stuff. La Crosse, they've got away with a lot of stuff. All this fire cladding is being put everywhere. And you have non-traditional procurement methods for buildings. You've got consultant teams whose fees are cut to the bone. You've got scope that's reduced in some areas and kept in others. You've got project managers coming in, often from non-construction backgrounds, to manage these projects. Yeah. And you have conflict of interest with building certifiers engaged directly by the builders. They're managed under a D&C contract, and it can get really messy. They basically self-certify themselves, and that's a real problem. Yeah, exactly. That's the issue. That's the issue. Because the thing is that if they do a shonky building, sure, it may damage them, the builder's brand, it may damage their name, but they'll phoenix it and start up again. Yeah. If you're in the industry, guys, let me know in the comments examples of where this has happened, because I know firms here in Brisbane where it's happened. Let's try and get a list of them together where they're phoenix and the people have all gone into another one and just started doing the same thing again. Quality control methods need to change, and our project will give some pointers as how that might happen. We'll see. The professor says that the combination of continued high-density growth and the unknown scale of major structural defects is unsettling and poses a real threat to the viability of future cities. Combination of continued high-density growth. Well, maybe we need to address that growth. Maybe that's something for a political compromise needs to be reached. Maybe we need to slow down the growth. We'll see. We'll see. He says the project comes at a pivotal time, following growing concerns about the safety and quality of new buildings after the infamous Opal Tower saga. This is not a minor problem, as the recent Opal Tower incident has made clear. The majority of new developments in Sydney are multi-unit. Yeah, it is a huge problem. Cities by and large are growing rapidly and are being reformed with multi-units in a way and in a scale that has never been done before. Yes, that's true. We really are entering a new epoch of humanity with our cities and how we're living. Therefore, if we're building subpar quality, which we are, then we've got a real problem on our hands, and in the future. The issue of defects is a real concern to the strata industry, given the risks posed if sentiment turns against apartment living, according to Professor Randolph. He says that dealing with defects is a critical matter for urban planners, that if not addressed will pose a significant threat to Australia's real estate market. Well, we all know where the real estate market's heading in Australia, don't we? The problem is people won't want to live in these apartments because they'll feel they're problematic, and I think Opal Tower exposes this. Then the market will collapse on a scale that we haven't seen before. Oh, we have in 1890. Professor Randolph hopes to see the balance of power shift towards the consumer with increased transparency, extensive building documentation, and more information about track records and developing defects rectification guides. Thousands of consumers are buying properties and they really don't know whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. We need to get this information and knowledge into the hands of consumers, which will help shift the balance into their hands rather than have it all on the side of the developers. The good developers will welcome it and welcome a more knowledgeable consumer. The bad ones will be squeezed out of the market. Yeah, I can see that. An interim report on the project's findings will be released at the end of the year. Well, I will make a note to follow up this report because I think it's interesting to see what will come of it. You know, do you think it'll help? Do you think it won't? What do you guys reckon? It's interesting. I think with the technology we have at hand at the moment, it will be much easier to really provide adequate confidence to your buyers of the quality and workmanship of your buildings. We'll see. Guys, thanks for joining me for this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.